Hello everyone, Kevin Gooch here. Thank you for your time today. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the work of the 100 Black Men of Atlanta, Inc. We are a 34-year-old organization that focuses on mentoring and making a difference in the community. We are a volunteer-led member organization with a roster that begins with Hammer and Hank Aaron and ends with Ambassador Young. And we have a lot of legends and titans of industry in between. And the common theme amongst these men is that we all came together to lock arms and truly make a difference to impact our community through mentoring, because what they see is what they will be. We appreciate all of the support that we've received throughout the years and in 2020. But unfortunately, we've had to cancel 3 of our biggest fundraisers for the year. That would be our 100 Honors, the Celebration Bowl, and Divots and Divas. And so as an organization, we need your help. We need more help. If you want us to continue to provide the programming that we've been delivering to our young people, if you want us to continue to deliver on that promise that we've made to positively impact the community by making a difference in the lives of the young people in these communities that are often left behind, these vulnerable young people, please support our organization. You can go to our website, you can make a donation there. You can connect with our members, you can call our office, and we will be happy to have you in the fold with us, supporting us, investing in us, so that we can do the same for the young people that we serve in this community that we serve. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our latest installment of our Let's Talk Leadership series. For those that are new to our discussion, this is an opportunity to hear from incredible leaders in our community that are members of the 100 Black Men of Atlanta or friends of the 100 Black Men of Atlanta, so that our young people, our high school, our college scholars, and our young professionals can learn a little bit about what it takes to be a leader and the leadership journey of others. Today's session is brought to you by Holland and Knight. So we thank Holland and Knight for sponsoring today's session. And of course, this event is powered by the 100 Black Men of Atlanta, Inc. And we have a treat today. We are sitting down and having a conversation with Mark Adams of JP Morgan Chase & Co. Thank you for joining us, Mark.
Chairman Gooch, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. So we will read your intro, and then we will jump into our questions. And if we have time at the end, we will take a few questions from those tuning in. So Mark Adams is a managing director and a regional director for JP Morgan Chase & Co. Mark is the North Florida and Georgia regional director at JP Morgan Chase & Co. Mark directs the overall efforts and leads the branch and wealth management teams in Georgia, Jacksonville, Space Coast, Treasure Coast, Tampa Bay, and Orlando. Mark brings more than 2 decades of financial services experience to this role. Prior to joining JP Morgan Chase, he spent 28 years at Bank of America, where he held sales and executive leadership roles in consumer banking, business banking, mass affluent banking, and private wealth management. Mark earned his BS in financial management from Clemson University and his MBA from Georgia State University. He has also completed the Wharton Executive Program Performance Leadership Program at the University of Pennsylvania. Mark serves on the board of the Georgia State University Alumni Association, the advisory board of the Georgia State Robinson College of Business, the Board of Junior Achievement of Georgia, and the Carter Center Board of Counselors. Mark is also one of our very proud members of the 100 Black Men of Atlanta, Inc. Mark lives in Atlanta with his lovely wife and my dear friend, Kim, and their daughter, Allison. So it is a pleasure to have Mark with us today. I have to say, Mark, I know you are a Clemson guy.
get ready to take this L when we kick off the season when the Bulldogs come up to Charlotte. I'm just gonna put that out there.
I can't wait till we get it on in Charlotte. So it's gonna be a fun time.
All right. Well, let's talk a little leadership, sir.
All right.
All right. We are glad to have you today. So tell us a little bit about your current role with JP Morgan Chase and sort of what's your story? What was the path that it took to get to this place with such an iconic institution?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the introduction, and looking forward to our conversation today. So, the bio, it touched on it a little bit. I lead the consumer bank channel and the wealth management channel for JP Morgan Chase for Georgia and for North Florida. About 3/4 of the geography of Florida, but obviously I'm based here in Atlanta, and I've got about 270 or so branches, about 2,000 employees that I have responsibility for, and been with JP Morgan Chase for about 3 years now after, as mentioned, a 28-year career at Bank of America. And so I tell people that 28 years at one firm, I thought I was going to ride it out until the retirement days, but JP Morgan Chase actually made a compelling case for me to come and join their leadership ranks. And I'm 3 years into my opportunity here at JP Morgan Chase, and feel like it's one of the best career decisions that I could have ever made. And certainly my friends over at Bank of America, lots of mentors and leaders that I benefited from over that 28-year period, had lots of roles, and really developed a lot of my leadership chops in many of the roles that I held over at Bank of America. So certainly have fond memories of my time there.
So 28 years at Bank of America, 3 years at JP Morgan Chase. You're 31 years into this finance profession. As a young person, did you know you wanted to go into finance?
Had no idea. Actually, I'll tell you my story. My story was, I'm a product of South DeKalb County. I grew up in South DeKalb, went to Columbia High School. My disruptor, and I call it a disruptor because it actually helped change the trajectory, I think, of my career, was Inroads. And my senior year of high school, I had an opportunity to apply for an Inroads internship, and that internship happened to be with a bank. It was a bank that was a predecessor to Bank of America, CNS Bank, and I spent 4 summers while I was in college as an intern for CNS Bank, and it really gave me an opportunity to get a view of what the business world was like. And I think that's what really sparked my interest in continuing my career in the banking and finance world.
So, and we target these towards our college students and our high schoolers. So before you got that internship at Inroads, what did you think you wanted to do with your life?
I was still trying to figure it out. I knew I wanted to do something as a leader because I felt like there was a leader inside of me, and I wanted to, have an opportunity to be able to lead and to help others. I just didn't know at that time, how it was going to play out. And so I had thought about banking, but I had thought about other sales and marketing, type roles. And so, as I was growing up, I think, I had several different paths that I thought that I would, pursue. And it just turned out that banking was the one that was the best fit for me.
Perfect. I like to let people understand that just because you don't know as a freshman or while you're in college, that doesn't mean that you can't be successful. And through
right.
several of these discussions, I've heard a common theme of being flexible and being fluid and sort of, taking it as it comes and then making the most out of every situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what did your parents do? Were they in the finance space, or were they corporate professionals?
Actually, they weren't. So again, I grew up in South DeKalb County. My parents were hardworking people. My mom worked in retail for many years. My dad, who's since passed away, worked for UPS for many years and retired from there. And so even though neither one of them went to college, both of them were very hardworking people, and both of them were actually very good with money. And so they were very responsible in terms of how they budgeted, not living a lifestyle greater than what they could afford. And
Um, so look at their son now, right? You figured it
yeah,
out and you ended up in the finance space. So what is a day like in the life of Mark Adams?
well, since COVID, it actually looks like this a lot. I spend about 80% of my day on Zoom calls, it seems like. And so I think I'm suffering from a little bit of Zoom fatigue right now. And I'm actually looking forward to the opportunity to be able to get back out into the field. As I mentioned, earlier, I've got a pretty broad geography that I'm responsible for. And so one of the great things about my role is whether it's here in Atlanta doing branch visits with our teams here in Atlanta, or going to places like Tallahassee, Florida, Jacksonville, Space Coast, Treasure Coast, Orlando, Tampa, spending time with our teams and really focusing on growing our business and growing our footprint. In Georgia, in particular, we're adding branches throughout Georgia, and so I get the opportunity to be able to help drive and grow our business here by building new branches to be able to start to compete and grow our footprint, our brand awareness, and market share here in the Atlanta market.
Yeah, we see the branches popping up, man. You all are doing a great job with the growth here in Atlanta. I just noticed a new one on Peachtree Street yesterday, so I see
That's
the
right. It
growth.
opened up just opened up a few weeks ago.
Yeah. So if you have a young person that is interested in the finance space, what do you think is the most important characteristic of that young person that wants to go into the finance space?
You touched on this a few minutes ago, but one is having a never-ending curiosity, especially in today's world. I think is something that's very important. I think curious leaders are many times the most successful leaders, and so that's something that I would definitely recommend to any young person. The other is flexibility, and flexibility is important, especially in an environment where we're transforming, and innovation is something that has become something that we're getting used to, but the speed of innovation is actually accelerating. And so, as a young person, I think being able to understand and adjust to the speed of innovation is something that we're all going to have to adjust to, but particularly young people. I read something recently that said that over the next 10 years, we're going to experience the same amount of innovation in the financial services industry, and really in industry overall. We'll experience the same amount of innovation over the next 10 years as we've experienced in the previous 150 years. And so you think about that, the pace and the speed of innovation is something that is going to be mind blowing for a lot of people. And so I think in order for young people to be successful as we move forward, they're going to have to keep up with the pace of that innovation.
And when you're looking to grow your team, what other characteristics do you look for in hiring people?
Um, obviously having a track record of success, being ambitious, being conscientious, those things are important. Emotional intelligence is something that I look for, and I think is very important because that tells me your ability to be able to continue to grow and where your cap is from either a growth or a leadership standpoint. So emotional intelligence, self-awareness, again, that curiosity is something that is very important.
Is there anything that differentiates someone you're adding to your team versus someone you're looking to promote to leadership of the team? Do those folks that you're looking to promote to leadership have to carry in any additional characteristics that you look for?
I think that's a great question, and the answer is yes. For me, uh, when I think about promoting a leader on my team, it's not just about their ability to do the job. And I think sometimes employees and people feel like, hey, I deserve an opportunity for leadership because I've mastered the technical aspects of a job. And so that is one component of it, and you have to do that. And so that's a requirement. But in addition to that, it's about more than can you do the job. For me, it's about can you weather the storm. And when I think about leadership, the reality is that any leader, regardless of what role you're going to be in, at some point is going to experience a storm. It's not if a storm comes, it's when a storm comes. And when you're responsible for leading other people, being able to navigate that through that storm, doing it confidently with a level of calmness to be able to reassure people that things are going to be okay is critically important. And so just because you can do the job doesn't necessarily tell me that you have the ability to be able to weather the storm as a leader. And so that's one of the things that I look for. The second thing I look for is their ability to listen. I think it was Steve Jobs that once said, um, leaders who don't listen will eventually be surrounded by people who have nothing to say. And
Mm.
I think success as a leader requires you to be able to surround yourself with people that will help provide guidance. And I think you've got to be able to set your ego aside to be able to listen to others, to be more curious than certain. That's another mantra that I try to follow, and make sure that we're leading people in the right direction.
That's great stuff, man. And we're going to stick a pin in that storm comment because, of
Okay.
course, we just went through the storm of storms, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Were there any prominent mentors in your professional journey? And if so, how did you get the most out of those mentoring relationships? And I like to ask that question because, of course, we're a mentoring organization, and we often
Yeah.
hear from our mentees, well, I don't know how to connect with my mentor. I don't know how to sort of make the most of this relationship. So did you have great mentors along the way? And if so, what did those relationships look like? And how did you get the most out of
Yeah, absolutely. I had the benefit throughout my career, even during my college years, of having great mentors. Milton Jones is someone that I consider to be a mentor even to this day, and has helped me throughout my career, just giving me guidance. And there's a list of other people that I could name, and and that's something that I'm personally passionate about. And so mentoring is one of my passions. And I actually believe when I think about mentoring, I actually think of it in terms of building a board of directors. And so I don't have
it?
just one mentor. I actually have many mentors, and they serve as kind of my virtual board of directors. And many of my mentors may have specific areas of expertise that from time to time I have the ability to be able to lean on, to be able to get advice, and for them to be able to pour into me. And I have mentors that when I need a swift kick, are willing to do that too. And if I need someone that's going to give me guardrails or tell me when I'm wrong, they've got permission to be able to do that too. And so it's those mentoring relationships that I think over the years have really given me lots of guidance. Like you, I hear from young people that sometimes they have a hard time connecting with their mentors. And one of the things that I share with them a lot is that and one of my mentors would say this to me all the time. He would tell me, be a river, not a reservoir.
Mm.
And that's something that has always stuck with me, in that in order for us to get, I think, the most out of a mentoring relationship, it's important for us to actually be mentored, but also be a mentor. And I think regardless of where you are, if you're a student, if you're an 11th grader, you have the ability to be able to mentor an eighth grader. If you're a junior or a senior in college, you have the ability to be able to mentor someone who's in high school. If you're a young professional, you have an opportunity to mentor and share what's been imparted into you with others. And so my challenge to a lot of young people around mentoring is making sure that they're that river, not a reservoir, that they're not just soaking in this information, but they're passing it along. And the reason why I think that's important is, for me, I actually get a lot more out of mentoring relationships when I'm actually passing that information on. And it actually is a reminder to me as I'm sharing, and I mentor a lot of young professionals today. Uh, it's a reminder for me in terms of where I was at one point and things that I need to continue to focus on or get better at.
Let me ask you this. So I know you work with a lot of professionals in your organization. What is it that stands out about someone that wants you to mentor them that makes you say, yeah, that's a person that I want to connect with and share these gems that I have with?
It's really having that curiosity, that ambition. One of the things that I challenge people to do, and when someone comes to me and say, "Hey, Mark, I want you to be my mentor or to give me guidance," one of the things that I challenge them to do is to find someone else that they can mentor. And Because that to me is part of the deal. I want to be able to share with them, because that's how you create that you're able to actually multiply your impact by having that person that you're mentoring agree to mentor others. And so that's one of the things that I do. If that's something that they're not willing to do, or that they're not able to do at this point, then we talk about other options, for them to be able to get the advice that they need. But that's something that I look for, is that willingness to be that river, as I mentioned, and not just a reservoir.
So let's get back to this storm point, right? So
Okay.
we are over a year into this coronavirus pandemic, which just rocked us all, rocked all of our institutions and just our way of life in general, and just dealt a major blow to society. How has it impacted JP Morgan Chase? And were there any sort of pandemic pivots for your organization under your leadership?
Depending on where you are in JP Morgan Chase, it impacted different people differently. And so when I think about many of our employees at JP Morgan Chase that maybe worked in a corporate center of some sort, obviously their biggest change was that they were now working from home. They were doing Zoom calls. They were finding other ways to be productive other than coming into a physical location. And so, even though that may have been something that was challenging, we actually found, especially leveraging technology, that you have the ability to be productive in those type of environments. It's interesting because we didn't have a playbook for COVID-19 back in March of last year. We actually literally had to write the playbook as we went along, and so I think there were a lot of lessons that we learned. But one of the things that we found is that, especially for many of our employees, you have the ability to be impactful and productive in a more virtual environment. Uh, so set that aside for a second, and now you think about our retail bank channel, where we have in Atlanta, for example, 600 employees. Across my footprint, over 2,000 employees that didn't have the option to work from home. Our job was to figure out ways to keep our branch network open, or as many of our branches open as possible, while keeping our employees, our customers safe and out of harm's way. And so that was probably the most difficult uh, obstacle that we had to navigate through the pandemic, was making sure that we had processes and protocols in place, whether it's wearing a face mask, social distancing, even in a branch environment where in some cases that was very difficult to do and to navigate. We had to make some physical adjustments to many of our branches to be able to accommodate that. And so it was really a collective effort for us to be able to really weather that storm. And certainly, we made some mistakes along the way. But a year into it, I think we're in a much better place. And the great news is that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And so we may not ever get back to what we would consider pre-COVID normal, but I think we've got something on the horizon that will look something closer to what normal was pre-pandemic.
So tell us what lessons that you learned in the pandemic that you think will outlast the pandemic. So once this is over, which hopefully will happen soon, what are some of the lessons that you've learned or adopted during this time that you think will stay in place even post-pandemic?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing that I learned and was inspired by was the resiliency of our people, and even for our people that were in very uncertain circumstances, their willingness and desire to be able to come in to serve our clients each and every day, to make sure that our clients had access, during very difficult times. I think that's something that really inspired me. As it relates to learnings that I think will outlast the pandemic, certainly our ability to leverage technology to get things done, even in a branch environment. When you think about the evolution of branch banking, throughout the country, and technology actually creating more ways to not have to go into a branch to cash a check or make a deposit. I think it's going to accelerate some of those innovations, so that many of the transactions that are done today in a branch, in a physical location, will be done virtually, even more so than it is today. And so I think you'll see an acceleration of that. And so you'll think about our branch network as more of an opportunity to be able to engage with people around advice and coaching, and being able to help people with planning needs and business needs, uh, uh, planning for retirement, planning for buying your first home, really being more of a relationship center than it is a transaction center, as many of our branches are today. And so I think you'll see that evolution continue. As it relates to the corporate environment, you'll see probably uh, uh, more work from home opportunities, because I think we've proven during the pandemic that we've got an opportunity to be productive in the environment. But the other thing that I've learned is that you can't replace that human interaction, that face to face human interaction. And so, as much as I appreciate the opportunity to be on Zoom calls and talking with people to be able to communicate, I also value the opportunity to be able to look at someone eye to eye and shake their hand and have a human interaction. And so, I think we have a lot of people that are missing that right now. And so I think a lot of us are looking forward to the opportunity to be able to get back to that more interactive type of experience.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's shift a little bit and shift our discussion to more on the leadership side. And
Sure.
leadership takes courage, right? I truly believe that leadership is the willingness to fail publicly, right? You're out front. There's
Yeah,
no one that can give you cover. You take all the criticism, and you have to sort of dish out all of the praise. You have to dish it out to other people and take on all the criticism. So what
that's right.
motivates you to deal with that daily grind of managing employees and helping to build an iconic brand like JP Morgan Chase as a leader?
Yeah. So it's interesting you talk about being willing to fail publicly. I actually just recently had a conversation with someone that I was mentoring, and we were talking about failure in particular. And actually, I used an example that I'll share with you guys. And the person I was talking to, I asked them, uh, in your opinion, who's the most successful NBA basketball player of all time? Uh, and then depending on what era you come from, you might get different answers. But from my era, it's Michael Jordan. Uh, and so MJ, most successful NBA basketball player of all time. And so we asked the question, um, do you have any idea what Michael Jordan's field goal percentage was during his career? We were able to look it up on the internet. It's 49.7% field goal percentage. So that tells us that out of every 1,000 shots he took, he made 497. But it also means that he missed 503 out of those thousands. And so then I asked the question, well, I wonder who has the highest field goal percentage of all time in the NBA. Again, go to the internet, tell you everything you want to know. It's actually somebody named Jordan, but it's DeAndre Jordan. DeAndre Jordan has a 64%, actually 67% field goal percentage career wise, highest in NBA history. And so if you just compare those two names, DeAndre Jordan and Michael Jordan, 32,000 career points, 6 NBA championships. DeAndre Jordan, 8,000 points, 0 championships. You can make an argument that DeAndre Jordan's had a pretty solid NBA career, but I don't think anybody would say that he's the most successful NBA player of all time. And so the point of the story is that we shouldn't define success by the absence of failure. actually failure is an integral part of success. It's actually that failure that makes success even more sweet for us. And so I think those are things that, as I mentor people, I coach them. It's important for them to understand that as a leader, you're going to fail, and you're going to fail multiple times. It's not about how many times you fail. It's actually how many times you're able to overcome that failure that actually determines the level of your success. And so those are things that, I've tried to impart upon people. And even, as I mentioned earlier, during the COVID pandemic, we made a lot of mistakes early on in terms of decisions that we made as a firm in terms of how to handle the pandemic. And we learned from those. And, we're 12 months into it, and we feel like we're in a much better position than we were back then. And so, again, success shouldn't be characterized by the absence of failure. That's something I'm very, passionate about.
So tell us a little bit about sort of your philosophy on leadership, right? You have some leaders that are focused on building a bench to come behind them. You have some leaders that are laser focused on numbers. You have some leaders that are servant leaders. What's
Mhm.
your philosophy on leadership, and what's your North Star when it comes to leadership?
Yeah, so I think servant leadership is definitely something that I would characterize my leadership as. Again, I think about the people that report to me. They may report to me, but I work for them. My goal is to help them be successful at what they do. And if you're a leader, I think if that is your North Star, uh, to help others be successful, then you'll in turn be successful as a leader. And so I think, my philosophy, over the years, again, has really evolved because I didn't think that way, 20 years ago, probably. But, as I've gotten older and a little bit wiser, I understand the importance of making sure that the leaders that work for me and the team that works for me, if I can help them be successful at what they do, then I'll in turn be successful at what I'm doing.
Let's unpack that a little bit. What made your leadership style evolve? You said you weren't like that in the past. What made your leadership style evolve?
Early in my career, and I would probably characterize it as selfish. It was all about me. It was all about what's the next job for me? How can I get promoted? How can I get more money? All those things are important, and it's not to say that you shouldn't focus on those things. But as a leader, if you're thinking in terms of how do I help others? You're actually you're lifting yourself and others with you. And so I think it's reach back as you climb as a leader, and that's something that I think with maturity, I've actually started to embrace a lot more as I've gotten older.
Do any books come to mind that help guide your leadership style, or any that stand out that you would recommend to the folks tuning in today?
A couple that have made a real big difference. First, and I'm a big John Maxwell fan, and so he writes a lot of books on leadership. The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell is something that I would highly recommend to any leader. And then there's another one that I really enjoy. It's called Give and Take by Adam Grant, and it's a book that was written, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago that actually had lots of impact on me, and it because it really focused on being able to create win-win situations and being more of a giver than you are a taker, and success being determined more by what you give rather than what you receive. And so that's a book also that I would highly recommend to a lot of leaders.
So, when you look back over the course of your life, when can you remember first being thrust into a leadership position, and how did that go?
Um, you know, Probably throughout high school, I was a part of different organizations, and so you end up, in leadership, positions, there. A lot of times, it got off to a rocky start, and a lot of it had to do with, probably my lack of confidence and not wanting, or maybe even wanting to be the smartest person in the room and not acknowledging uh, any vulnerability as a leader. And so you spend a lot of time trying to cover up what you may internally feel like are inadequacies. And so I think once I was able to let that go, I was actually able to grow into leadership. But yeah, it probably started in high school with just different organizations that I was a part of. And in college, I was president of my fraternities chapter, and had an opportunity to demonstrate leadership there. And then obviously throughout my career, opportunities to really fine tune and hone my leadership skills.
That's a great answer, man. And I like asking that question because, of course, several of our younger people that are watching are going through this now, and they're sort of living this journey. So I like for them to hear that it may not go well early on, but that doesn't mean you can't be successful over the course of time. So just sort of
That's
stay
right.
after it and continue to grow and evolve as a leader, and you'll figure it
Absolutely.
out.
That's right.
Um, what are a couple experiences that you're most proud of, or a couple of your successes that you've had, major successes?
When I think about successes in my career now versus again years ago, it's actually more about how I've been able to help others in becoming successful in their career. And so I have a couple of people that I've mentored over the years, a couple of people that I've hired, and I took chances on, and those chances actually worked out well for me, and it worked out well for them. And so I think about people that I've actually invested in, and I've seen them blossom in their own leadership, and to the point where they're people that I've hired that are doing so well, and some with this organization, some with other organizations, that when I look at them and the success that they had, and knowing that maybe I played just a small part in that is very satisfying to me. And so that's something that I get a lot of personal satisfaction from.
Yeah, that is awesome, and it relates to a phrase that I've heard, and I can't remember where I got it from, but it says there's a difference between success and significance, and what you
Yeah,
just described was significance, where you are working. Success is you're being selfish, you're focused on the house, the car, the money,
yeah,
the career accomplishments. Significance is when you're working to make sure other people
that's
can
right.
be successful, and so,
Yeah.
we should all strive to be significant over just successful.
Yeah, and that's actually something that John Maxwell focuses a lot on, and that's something that I try to live by. And you're right, success is a reflection of how well you've done for yourself, whereas significance is a reflection of how well you've done for others. And so you could make an argument that in the grand scheme of things, significance is a higher order of success.
Yeah, I mean, when we're done on this earth, our success goes with us, but our significance is what will live on through others. So
That's
that's what we
right.
should
That's a
strive
part of our
toward.
legacy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about an experience or two that did not go so well that you wish you had back and could do differently.
Wow. I think about, and I don't know if it's something I would do differently, but it's an experience that didn't go so well. So over my 28 years of, kind of growing up at Bank of America and now at JP Morgan Chase, especially early in my career, I was someone that just had the benefit of, especially in the 90s when I was coming up, there was always some merger or acquisition that created some level of disruption. And what that did was it actually created opportunity for me. And it was opportunity for me to get promoted or to take on a new responsibility. And so I was on a, upward trajectory from a career standpoint, to the point where, and I think this was back in the late 90s, where my manager at the time came to me and said, "Hey, Mark, we were doing some talent planning in the organization, and we've designated you as quote unquote high potential." And I wore that as a badge of honor, because I felt like, wow, this is something that the firm sees in me as someone that has the potential to go far in the organization. Well, lo and behold, about a month later, that same manager called me into his office, and we were going through a merger with a different bank at that time. And he said to me, "Hey, just want to let you know that as a result of this merger, we're going to be consolidating some jobs. Your job is being eliminated, and it's going to be moving from Atlanta to Charlotte, North Carolina, you have the opportunity to apply for the job. There's no guarantee that you're going to get it, but if you do, you have to move to Charlotte. And then he said, otherwise, you have an opportunity to take this severance package. And he reaches in his drawer and he puts it on the table in front of me. And I was blown away because a month earlier he was telling me I had this great, path at the company. And so I was angry about it. I was frustrated. I thought the bank at the time was making a mistake. And I remember going back and having a conversation with my father. This was before he passed away, and sharing with him my frustration. And I was telling him the bank's making a mistake. There's no way that you can have somebody do my job from Charlotte. I was just giving all the reasons why it just didn't make sense. And I'm saying the bank is making a mistake. And my dad just kind of sat patiently and he looked at me and he said, "Well, how much did the stock price go down today as a result of that, this mistake?" And I knew where he was going, but it was a hard pill to swallow at the time. And what he said to me, he said, "Mark, the bank didn't make a mistake. The bank made a decision. And as a company, banks and every other company, they have to make decisions that sometimes will impact you positively, and other times it may impact you negatively. But the reality is just like the bank has to make a decision, you have to make a decision to be able to own your own career and do what's right for you and your family." And so that actually changed the way I looked at my relationship with my employer. Rather than looking at my employer as someone that was going to guide my path for me, it gave me an opportunity to take control of my career and really guide my own path. And it was actually, fortunate enough, I was actually able to secure another position, a leadership position, out of this disruption that actually gave me a promotion, opportunity to make more money, and for me to continue on my trajectory. So at the end of the day, it was a good news story for me, but the process was actually a little bit painful, but I learned a lot from it, and it actually helped me grow as a leader.
So you've mentioned that definitely sounds like a hurdle that was thrown in front of you that you had to overcome. And you've mentioned a few hurdles that you've had to overcome. What would you say is the biggest obstacle that you've had to overcome in your career professionally and personally?
As a leader, I think one of the obstacles is getting more comfortable at public speaking. I
Mm,
remember early in my career, I was very good at what I did, and I was good at having individual one-on-one relationships. But if you were to ask me to stand up in front of a group of people, I'd rather stick a needle in my eye and cut my
mhm.
left big toe off than actually have to stand up in front of a group and say something interesting. And so I had to make a conscious decision to get better as a storyteller, to get better as a communicator, to be able to communicate a compelling story, to actually inspire others. And I think when you think about requirements of a leader, one of those requirements is to be able to inspire others. And so being able to communicate effectively is very important, as a leader. And that's something that I had to overcome, as it related to being able to communicate to broad audiences.
I think there's a little bit of a hidden message in what you just said as well, right? To be a good leader, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? And so you knew you didn't like to do this, but you had to force yourself to do it if you wanted to be a good leader. So
That's
get
right.
comfortable being uncomfortable. I have a little story about that. When I was at Emory as an undergrad, I commuted back and forth. I didn't live on campus. And so when I graduated from Emory, I didn't feel like I had met a lot of people at Emory to build my network. And of course, the whole point in going to college is to meet people and build your network. So when I went to UGA, I decided that wouldn't happen again. And so I just decided I would run for first year class president. I didn't, I mean, I didn't think I would ever win. It was just an opportunity to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I knew that would force me to go meet people and talk to people and build those relationships, whether I won or not. And
That's
so
right.
to be a leader, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So there was definitely a message there.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's a great nugget. And you're right; you have to be uncomfortable, and that's where growth happens. When you're
Mhm,
uncomfortable, when you're comfortable, that probably means you're not growing as much as you could.
mhm. Yeah. So say you have an underperformer on your team. How do you light a fire or motivate that underperformer?
You know, being able to handle that communication, one with humanity, but with directness, I think is very important. And so I'm a big believer in setting clear expectations, meaning uh, what is expected of you. In addition to that, when it's expected, meaning it's like, here's what you have to do, and here's what you need, here's when you need to do it by. Uh, and then thirdly, with an underperformer, I think setting the time frame in terms of here's when you need to do it by, and here's what's going to happen if you're not able to accomplish that. Uh, those are three things that I think are important to be able to establish up front. And then the fourth thing is actually saying to them, here's what I'm willing to do as a leader to help you. That
Mm,
I'm in this with you, but I can't ever get to a point, and where I lose confidence in someone is when I feel like I care about their success more than they care about their own success. And it's at that point that I typically, really feel like, hey, yeah, this is something that's not going to work out for them or for us. And so I'm a big believer in making sure that we set people up for success. I had a manager one time that would tell me that um, hiring decisions, hiring the right people is the most important, part of our jobs. Many times we want to make sure that we're setting people up for success. And he would say that if the job requires you to climb a tree, don't hire a fish, hire a squirrel.
mm,
And because if you hire a fish, you'll spend your time trying to coach and manage and lead and help that fish climb the tree. Whereas if you just put them in water and let them go, they can be more successful. And so I'm a big believer in making sure that we're not spending a whole lot of time trying to teach fish how to climb a tree when we can just go hire squirrels. And so that's something that sticks with me. And so being able to bring people to those moments of self-awareness in terms of, are you cut out for this role or this job, is something that's very important too. And it's a part of our role as a leader to be able to do that.
man, that is good stuff. That is good stuff. So I think one of the most challenging aspects of leadership is dealing with difficult people and dealing with difficult conversations, right? Just people that are just unreasonably difficult for the sake of being difficult, or those difficult conversations. So how do you deal with, I know you serve on boards. I'm sure you've had some board member that is just a pain in the rear and just difficult for the sake of it. How do you deal with those people, and how do you deal with difficult, challenging conversations that you have to have with people?
Yeah. So I actually, in anticipation of the inevitability that at some point you're going to have difficult conversations with a lot of people that you work with over a period of time, I'm a big believer in building up. I call it relationship capital. And I'm in the banking business. And so when I think about relationships, I think about it in terms of deposits and withdrawals. Uh, and if you go in trying to make a withdrawal without first having made any deposits, that's not a relationship. In the banking business, you'd call that a robbery. uh, you know, is the reality. And so it's important to build up relationship capital. And so as you get to know people, invest in them, get to know them personally, build trust and credibility with them. Uh, it's when you actually have made those relationship deposits that makes those difficult conversations a lot easier to navigate through, because there's a feeling of trust, or maybe a foundation of trust that would actually resonate with whoever you're having the difficult conversation with. And so I can't say that I'm perfect at it. And like you, I sit on boards and have opportunities to, whether it's people that I'm working with, here at Chase, or people that I've worked with previously. But, I found that, difficult conversations are much easier to navigate through when you do have that relationship capital with that person built up.
Yeah, and then you mentioned earlier just sort of the humanity, treating people through that lens of humanity. And I think that's also very helpful in those difficult conversations and dealing with difficult people as well. It's just viewing them
Absolutely.
through that lens of humanity. So, what advice would you give a college student on leadership? And would that advice change for a younger professional, say 30 years old, that had been out in the workforce a little bit and had lived a little life?
Yeah. So I think regardless of where you are, you have to bloom where you're planted. And so if you're in college, if you're in high school, wherever you are, I think it's looking for opportunities to grow, especially if you aspire to be a leader in some way, shape, or form. Look for opportunities to lead. It could be in big ways, or it could be small ways. It could be taking on a project. It could be taking on responsibility for some type of initiative. But really get practice as a leader and being out front. The other piece, regardless of whether you're in college or high school, is effective communication. Master the art of storytelling. That's something that even now I'm trying to focus on mastering the art of being a storyteller to be able to inspire and using that as a way to inspire others. And so that's something that I think the earlier you start, the better for you over the long term. And so, and again, being that river and not a reservoir is something that is important as it relates to mentoring, establishing mentoring relationships, being mentored to, and being a mentor to others is something that, regardless of where you are, you have an opportunity to have impact, real impact.
So you have a very distinguished 30 plus year career in banking, and it's been filled with twists, turns, curves, and risky moments. If someone said they wanted to be the next Mark Adams, what would you tell him or her to do to start that trajectory and prepare for the road ahead? Like from a substantive perspective or looking for opportunities like internships, what advice would you give them to start that trajectory?
So the first piece of advice I would give them is to set their sights higher than just being the next Mark Adams. But I would also tell them, never stop being curious. Always continue to grow and learn. Surround yourself with good people, and don't be afraid to not be the smartest person in the room. When I think about things that I've learned about leadership over the years, I've learned from a lot of great leaders, and I've also learned from a lot of bad leaders that I've had. And actually, the lessons that I've learned from bad leaders are probably even more impactful because it tells me what not to do. And so I've had leaders that, because they felt the need to always be the smartest person in the room, they would either intentionally or unintentionally, many times, sabotage this their own success and the success of their team to protect their own fragile ego, meaning that every great idea had to come from them. And if it didn't come from them, it wasn't a great idea, or they felt like they had to be the one, to take all the credit for the success and place the blame somewhere else. And so when you think about what I've learned from bad leaders, it's been as impactful, I think, as what I've learned from great leaders. And so I would, certainly encourage people to kind of check their ego at the door when it comes to leadership, surround themselves with others that can inspire them, that can hold them accountable, create a board of directors, as I talked about, as mentors, people that can help you navigate your career, be a mentor to others. I think is something that is critically important as well.
I tell you what, man, that is a word there. Let the church say amen on that one. So, what has been your most awe-inspiring moment as a leader?
Wow. So at JP Morgan Chase, one of the things that attracted me to come here was a program that we have at JP Morgan Chase called Advancing Black Pathways. And Tashonda Duckett, who was the previous CEO of the Chase Consumer Bank, who actually was just recently named as CEO of TIAA, second Black female CEO, along with Roz Brewer, and is someone that is been a mentor of mine and a personal friend of mine, and someone that inspires me each day. She actually created this Advancing Black Pathways initiative while she was here at Chase. And so I had opportunities to be in rooms with some significant leaders, people like Colin Powell, Melody Hobson, Kevin Hart, Soledad O'Brien, Condoleezza Rice, to talk about leadership opportunities and to talk about ways to be able to close the wealth gap in Black and Brown communities, to be able to address issues around career and wealth building in Black and Brown communities throughout the US. And so just having the opportunity to have that interaction and be around other successful, distinguished leaders was definitely awe-inspiring for me.
I'm so proud of those sisters that are leading those Fortune 500
That's
companies.
right.
That is awesome, man.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and your sister that is over at Papa John's doing her thing. So
She's
all of
doing her
it's a
thing
bunch of
over
bad
there. That's
sisters out
right.
here.
She's carrying the flag for the family over at Papa John's, leading the diversity inclusion efforts. So, yeah, very, very proud of my wife.
That's right. So what would you like your legacy to be as a leader and sort of as a person?
Yeah. You actually touched on it earlier. When you think about success and significance and the difference between the two, again, success being a reflection of how well you've done for yourself, and significance being a reflection of how well you've done for others. I'm a man of faith, and I believe that one day I'm going to have to stand before my Maker and give account for my life. And so, the older I get, the more I realize that when that day comes, and I hope it doesn't come for a long time, but when that day comes, he's not going to ask me about, my success, because that was a function of everything that was poured into me by my parents, by my family, by my mentors, by my leaders, who actually set me up for that success. And so he's not going to ask me, how come I didn't make more money or drive a nicer car or build a bigger house? But he might ask me what type of husband was I to Kimberly? What type of father was I to my daughter Allison? How was I significant to the community that I served and to the people that I mentored? And what did I do to make a difference in the lives of others? And so when I think about my legacy, I think of it through the lens of significance and how I can be significant to my family and to the people in the communities that I serve.
So we're going to give you a crystal ball, and I want to ask you, what changes do you see in the banking industry over the next sort of 10 years? What are 2 or 3 things that may surprise people that you think are coming down the pipe in the banking industry?
Well, I tell you, and it's hard to, it's hard to predict, some of this, but you may remember I said earlier that over the next 10 years, we're going to have the same amount of innovation over the next 10 years as we have in over the last 150 years. And so think about 150 years ago, we are still in the horse and buggy days.
Yeah.
And so you think about, what's ahead of us. Certainly you think about technology, how we transact business, how, obviously, people, think about things like cryptocurrency and what that looks like, and blockchain, and artificial intelligence, I think, is going to play a major role in that, in terms of what the financial services industry look like. I think there's going to be a lot that changes uh, as it relates to that, but I also think that there's going to be an element, again, that human touch, that human interaction, as it relates to being able to uh, help people plan, for their financial future, to make the most out of their money. Those things, I don't think from a goal standpoint will change. How we see that evolve and what the means for accomplishing a lot of those objectives, I think, will change. And I'm like you, Kevin, man. I can't wait to see it all play out, and I think it's going to be great, for all of us.
All right, well, let me ask you this. Speaking of sort of goals, how can the 100 Black men or the folks tuning in sort of help you accomplish your goals and your sort of enterprise?
Hey, I think, I'm something else I talked about. I'm passionate about mentoring. I'm also passionate about education. I'm passionate about closing the wealth gap. and I'm passionate about entrepreneurship as one avenue to be able to close the racial wealth gap, particularly in markets like Atlanta. I think people have heard the thought that if you're a child born into poverty in the city of Atlanta, you have less than a 5% chance of ever climbing the economic ladder and climbing out of poverty. And I think as an organization, as a community, we've got to be able to change that. And it starts with education. It starts with being able to give kids a vision of what the future could look like for them. And so I think organizations like the 100 Black Men, play a critical role in helping with that, to be able to create career paths, education paths, entrepreneurship paths, and ultimately a path to be able to close the racial wealth gap in the United States. And so that's something that I think the 100 will continue to make an impact with. And I know that organizations like JP Morgan Chase will, also be very committed to that effort. And so I think if there's one ask that I would ask, of us there, is to continue to make that a priority.
Okay. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure and delight. Do you have anything else for the good of the order?
Hey man, I just appreciate you thinking of me and giving me an opportunity to, to yap at you for an hour. So it's been fun. I enjoyed it.